The prequels were underrated.
So we made them for, in fact.
Yeah, underrated at the time.
At the time.
Yeah.
And by the critics and stuff.
I feel like now,
time,
though, just needed a little bit of time, to sort of ferment in our popular culture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think they were appreciated at the time by the generation we made them for, if you like. It's just that there was no social media then. There was no we didn't hear their voice as much as you would do nowadays. With a film that's coming out now, there's no question what people think about it because you can see it on social media, and the audience's voice is much louder now, if you like. And at the time, basically the reaction was driven by the critics who decided they weren't as good as the original film, and George always had a very strong idea to make them different kinds of movies. He didn't set out to remake what he'd done in the 70s. He wanted to try to tell to set those films up, if you like, but also to make them feel different, which they do.
Hello and welcome to the Super 70 Podcast, episode 35, The Phantom Menace. I will be using the 1999 original issue DVD from 20th Century Fox. If you hit play on your DVD player now, this podcast should sync with the rest of the film. Currently, we have the 20th Century Fox Home Entertainment logo. And then now you will head into the THX logo for your sound system. No 1138. And then finally, the moment that we've all been waiting for, the 20th Century Fox fanfare. And your Lucasfilm Limited logo. Everybody hold your breath.
Most of us can remember where we were 25 years ago when we saw that Lucasfilm logo.
A long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. Boom! Shakalaka. And joining me in the hacienda today, I have two guests. The first you've heard before. We talked about Star Wars a lot. Paul Emig. How are you doing, Paul?
Doing great. Thanks for having me back, Jeff.
All right. And Warren Hayes.
Yep. Nice to be here.
All right. We are scrolling through episode 1, The Phantom Menace. We all remember what it was like because we're all in our 40s, right? Is that correct? Okay. And what got me was the second sentence of the scroll, which was the taxation of trade routes to outlying star systems is in dispute. And that was my first indication in the theater that, what was that? What's going on?
Something's not right.
Something's not right. And then while the Congress of the Republic endlessly debates this alarming chain of events, so something happened that I'm not aware of.
Right.
So this really, I wouldn't say just totally confused me because I was sold. I was sold 2 years before this movie came out.
Oh, yeah, and the rose-colored glasses didn't come off for probably 2 years after for me.
Right. I think it was the same for me until I read an article on Ain't It Cool News that was like 20 pages long if you had it in a Word doc, which tore the movie. No, and I wouldn't say tore it down, but broke it apart bit by bit and gave it the pluses and the minuses. And that was the first time I was like, yeah, I think he's got some valid points here.
Right.
But I was so invested in it, right? I was so completely invested in it. So I want to, because we're all so familiar with the opening scene, Paul, I want to know what your initial reaction was when you saw this in the theater in 1999.
You know, it's weird because it just totally washed over me. I think I'd almost forgotten how big a Star Wars fan I was, because we had this kind of big gap between, what I would say, not just when Jedi had come out, but maybe when A New Hope aired on broadcast television for the first time. And we recorded it with our VHS and played it over and over and over again with our with all the 1985 commercials and things like that. And then, things kind of ebbed, and like nobody really thought of Star Wars very much. Maybe a couple people owned the VHS, but there was a pretty substantial gap. So for new content, it wasn't like it tapped into something that we even knew we wanted until it was there. And so, it was so overwhelming. It was so exciting just getting caught up in the whole hysteria of it. It took me a couple of days even really to process what the movie was like. It was just all about the experience and seeing it at midnight with people who'd slept in front of the theater for a week and things like that.
Pretty crazy.
It was, yeah.
And we have the Jedi reveal here where we see Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi for the first time. And this had sort of been leaked beforehand, so we were aware that this was going to be a Padawan status, that it was going to be a master and student setup, and this jazzed all of us. And before we get to the big fight, Warren, please tell us about your experience in 1999.
Well, seeing that crawl, I had pause, and before that, we're all cheering with the 20th century fanfare, the Lucasfilm Limited logo. We all cheered when that happened. When we get to the scene where they take their hoods off, we all cheered. But I think in the back of my mind, I was still just taken by the crawl. Like, what is this going to be about? I wasn't sure. And as the film progressed, I think my anxiety just increased throughout the film and wasn't ultimately what I had hoped it to be. I think maybe a lot of people shared that same sentiment.
And there was a genuine enthusiasm that we had in the theater lobby, that we had in the theater everybody was in that theater early during the promos and all of that. And of course, everybody remembers that the trailer was released with a Martin Brest film, which is called Meet Joe Black with Brad Pitt. Everybody went to go see that trailer and then left Meet Joe Black. It was, you could not say that this film did not have a market. And people and everyone wanted to love it. I think I want to love this film.
So we're talking about 16 years between Jedi and Phantom Menace. So it's a big gap. I mean, now it doesn't seem like much anymore, considering how long we've waited between films. But I think the trailer was a big thing. Other than Meet Joe Black, was also The Siege. It was Waterboy. I saw Waterboy. A lot of people did leave, but we stayed, and they showed it again after the film was over. So we got to see it twice. Again, we didn't get to have any other way to see it online at that point. A QuickTime video for that trailer was not available yet.
And you had to use the dial-up modem even if you could get...
Right. And how small was that window when we did get it?
Really small.
So
well, it's important that we bring that up because, by the way, the lightsabers pop out for the first time, and you see the droids for the first time, and you see that droids have leaders for the first time because some droids have different colored heads.
Right.
And that's something that I can't argue about with the art direction and art design, and the production design on this film is very well thought out because you see that same color scheme pop up in the second film with the clones.
You do, yeah.
And I thought that it was a very whether or not Lucas thought about that to begin with, I don't know. Now, this is the first thing my wife said to me when we got into the car after the movie, believe it or not, was, what was up with those horrible Asian accents? Mm-hmm. And here we have the ambassadors. I struggled to understand them.
Well, I'm half Japanese, so it definitely made me feel a little uncomfortable. Yeah. So
it's some othering that was going on that I was not comfortable with at the time.
Right.
And you didn't have to be some raging bedwetting liberal to look at that and think this is really off.
It really is
right.
a very strange choice that it's tough to justify.
And particularly coming from someone like Lucas, who is like the interviews that he does, his interviewers, whoever they be, what platform they be, they specifically cut out a lot of his really left-wing socialist / communist views of the world, which is very egalitarian, very much racial elimination. I mean, his third wife is an African American. Like, there's no secret that he is this left-leaning person. So I was really, really shocked to see this in a Star Wars movie.
And I think if it was just the Nemoidians here, just that isolated thing, but it wasn't. It was also Watto and his really kind of Jewish stereotype peddler, and it was Jar Jar, that had this Jamaican patois that just
that he denies.
That he denies was, a particular choice. He was just, I think I saw Ahmed Best said, he was just using the same voice that he used to make his nieces and nephews laugh, and that was his go-to kind of goof around voice. But, I think it was just 1, 2, 3. It's like, wow, 3 racial stereotypes in one movie. This is kind of jarring.
Right. It was very jarring to me. Now, here, of course, I cannot state enough my fascination, my lifetime obsession with Natalie Portman. In any role she plays, in any movie she's in, I'm instantly sold. I'm there. And it doesn't matter the amount of clothing that she's wearing.
Well, my first exposure with Natalie Portman was in Heat, one of my all-time favorite films. I had not seen The Professional at that point.
Guys, I hate to apologize to you. I have a giant schnauzer who is way more interested in the 2 guests in my house than we were having her here. I was thinking of sampling Kevin Smith's Dachshund Checky and playing that back as a joke, but the son of a bitch has copyrighted it. I've done my best to edit it out, but unfortunately it's a goddamn nightmare. Thanks for your patience.
So my exposure with her from Heat is really the only thing I knew about her prior to The Phantom Menace.
And so you had not seen The Professional, Paul?
No, I don't think I had. I think I'd seen her in something. Maybe was it Beautiful Girls? It was one of those kind of when she played kind of an awkward teenager, and you could see there were some acting chops there. I think I was aware of her being in some other movies that I just hadn't got out to see yet.
Well, one of the things that I was really upset about after an obsessive amount of time watching and rewatching this is that her acting in this film just does not match what you see in her other films. I mean, in The Professional, which is 5 years before this, she's crying, she's emoting, she's doing this amazing range of things. And if you see what else is going on during that film, I really think she might have been nominated. Like, I think she should have been nominated, is what I'm saying. Of course, The Professional was released as, I think it was called Leon here, right, for the first time. And just very, very few people saw it. It was mainly like a French release.
They come here. How do they find me? They come here. They mess up my store. Hey!
I think that's something that I had to come to terms with, not just in this film, but all of the prequels, was that Lucas's directing just hits an all-time low.
Definitely.
Especially working with actors. I mean, you figure, I think Liam Neeson had made this movie right after, I think, one of the haunted houses. I forget if it's Haunting or
The Haunting.
One of those. And he, after 2 straight movies of acting in front of a green screen, he was ready to quit acting. Oh. And I think you could almost see that in Liam Neeson's performance here. There's a level of, God, when are we done with this? And you see it, certainly with Natalie Portman's acting in this, and as this prequel trilogy goes on, it does have some of the worst acting by some very fine actors, I might add, that are very good in other things, but are just lost here.
Well, that's very disappointing because you have Terrence Stamp in this movie,
right? Terrence, yeah.
You've got. Jimmy Smits is in this movie. Jimmy Smits is one of the most professional television actors of his generation.
Right.
And he can't get himself out of a box in this movie. It's really quite... And I have a hard time blaming the actors. It was very clearly the direction that was hurting the film. So Ahmed Best is here. Ahmed Best has been really open with the challenges in his life and the fallout of him playing Jar Jar. And he admitted, at least on one occasion, that he was thinking about suicide. And this is absolutely horrible for anyone to go through, and the public condemnation of such a role. I feel so bad for the man because I've got nothing against Ahmed Best. He was an actor doing a job. He did exactly what he was told. He turned in the performance that his director wanted him to, and I don't think that's Ahmed's fault.
Oh no, I don't think I never held any contempt for the voice actor. To me, it was all on George Lucas for Jar Jar. Absolutely. And I remember hearing him say that he was trying to make the Phantom Menace appeal to a generation of 6-year-olds, the way A New Hope maybe appealed to a generation of 6-year-olds when it came out in the late 70s. I don't know. I don't know if he just missed the mark on who his audience was, or maybe there's some people who are 20 years younger than us that think fondly of Jar Jar. But I know that most of my tribe, were people in their young 20s that grew up with Star Wars, were wanting this to be something different than what we saw in the first 10 minutes of Phantom Menace. And Jar Jar just did not fit that at all.
Warren, please chime in on Jar Jar.
One quick thing about Ahmed, too, that a lot of people may not know is, the extent of harassment that he received. His home phone number was leaked. He was getting death threats, him and his mother. This is serious harassment because he portrayed a character that you didn't like. And today that doesn't really sound that strange because it's happening in all fandom. So maybe not to the extent of calling someone on the phone and threatening them, but the internet makes it much easier to do that.
But it was a novel at the time.
Right.
I'd say it was, and I think that's one of those things that it is almost difficult to separate this from the rise of the internet and kind of an interconnected fandom, to where, number one, you felt like you were part of something larger than you were, where maybe you and a couple friends in your town knew something, liked something. You're able to connect to that worldwide community, and so you almost felt a little bit of entitlement to protect something that maybe you were never really in a position to be able to do. But then again, along with the rise of sharing information and the cred that you get from sharing something like that, I can see why it's very appealing to us as a generation kind of coming of age in the internet era. But to use it to berate an act, that's unconscionable.
Absolutely. And here we are in Gung Gung City, which I'm convinced after thinking about this for 20 years, not only do we not need Jar Jar, we don't need, in a film this long, we don't need Gung Gung City.
No.
At all.
And one of the things that really upsets me, and the prequels are loaded with this, is everything looks so beautiful, and it is so unnecessary. Mm-hmm. I don't have any problem with what I see in terms of the set design. And remember, Star Wars in 1977, that won an Oscar for production design.
Right.
I don't mean to devalue anything that anyone who had worked 70 hours a week for 3 years to create. Lucas's staff was, and all of his department heads, they were turning out what they thought was a quality product. But I don't. Boss Nass is unnecessary and to me very close to worthless.
Yeah, I don't disagree. It was interesting. One of the things I found, when George Lucas was asked to comment on The Force Awakens, about what he would have done differently, and he felt like there weren't enough worlds that we got exposed to. There weren't enough creatures that we got exposed to, and from some angle, I kind of get what he's saying, right? One of the appeals of A New Hope was the Mos Eisley scene where you see the cantina, where you see all these different alien races kind of intermingling. It was just really cool. It was kind of peak sci-fi, great world building. And you're right, they didn't do much of that in Force Awakens. They kind of stayed to some familiar worlds with mostly humans and Wookiees. So, I can kind of see that maybe what he's trying to do here is, hey, I've got a chance to make a Star Wars film for the first time in 2 decades. Of course we have to explore new alien cultures, even if they are completely unnecessary, as in terms of the Gungans.
Well, it seems to me, Warren, do you have thoughts on the Gungans?
Just, again, completely unnecessary. 16 years of waiting, not what we wanted.
No.
Did we have unreasonable expectations? Perhaps. But those movies are beloved by many, and I don't think that we were outside of the realm of thinking that we should love what we're about to see that we waited for.
That's true.
Well, and let's encapsulate what had happened in those 16 years. And I don't think a lot of our audience that are not extras like us remember. Okay, the VHS release in the 80s was staggered. There was a VHS trilogy that was released in the early 90s, which became the leading VHS sale. And I think it was the biggest one since Blade Runner or something like that for a sci-fi. Lucas remastered all 3 movies with THX, and he put them out on Laserdisc. The Laserdisc sold out, and it was, if you had gone to Laserdisc.com, they said that it was the best set since the Criterion edition of Goldfinger and Lawrence of Arabia, like those, and I have 2 sets of those Laserdiscs, and that was the only digital copy of a widescreen trilogy that you could find. Everything else was pan and scan cropped on VHS. And then, of course, he started remastering them and releasing them as the originals. The first one, the crawl was edited, obviously, with episode 1, which was put on there, which was not in the original theatrical run in 77. But other than that, when he re-released them in the mid-90s, they were exactly as you saw them in the theater in 77, 80, and 83. Then he started messing with them. Then the special edition came out. But even when I went to go, people forget this. When people went to see Star Wars special edition in, I believe it was 1997, that overtook E.T. as the highest grossing film of all time. That was an enormous deal. And Steven Spielberg gave a special Oscar to George Lucas at the awards ceremony that year, honoring him. And I believe it was like E.T. came out and like some weird animated thing that they had shown, and giving the Oscar to R2-D2, who put it inside himself and rolled off stage. That was a huge joke. And then the special editions added this new footage, which people were like, I don't know about this. And the big one being, of course, Warren, what was the big change everyone's still pissed off about?
Han shooting first.
And here you look at, this is the Emperor Palpatine, the future Emperor Palpatine, who is Senator Palpatine in disguise. Right. And this is still when we had some mystery about it, right? Like if you had the figure when you grew up, when our age, like we kind of had it on the inside that this was going to happen. But a lot of people who were seeing these movies, particularly the kids, they didn't know. Right. So that was a big deal. Now here is some very stale acting as we're fleeing through the Gungun city to we're trying to make it to Naboo, are we not?
Right. So Naboo's the planet, right? Gungan City is kind of an underwater city on the planet Naboo. I think we're trying to get up to the surface. At least the part that's not...
to feed. That's the capital.
To feed?
Feed. Yeah.
Feed. Okay. All right. Well, I learned something original for the first time in 25 years.
So these are some scenes that did look fantastic in the trailer. And I don't think it was the original trailer. I think maybe it was the second trailer that came out. There was some of this kind of underwater big sea creature footage. And again, just looked really cool. Because that's not something that the original trilogy had really explored, was anything underwater. So I think it was at least something different that we look forward to seeing on the big screen. And it doesn't suck. Again, unnecessary. But
well, I think because it's cross-cut with this horrible acting.
Yeah.
And if you owned the DVD that was originally released, and I don't know if this content on the bonus edition is included on any of the other editions, but there are amazing webisodes on the bonus disc, and there are amazing documentaries. And I think that they included all that material because they were just convinced, like Lucas had said, like, the prequels are making more monies than the first 3 films. How can you tell me that they're not popular and not loved? That's a valid argument. Mm-hmm. But I think over time those started disappearing because of the criticism that was so levied against it. And one of the interviews is Ewan McGregor describing how, like, when they're escaping Theed, how the acting was, oh, there's a fighter over there, oh, there's a fighter, and it was just very, very stale, and they had to go reshoot it. If you go on to the internet, where you can find tons of material about bonus material from Star Wars, you will not see that one documentary. You've got to go to this bonus disc to find it, and it's McGregor criticizing their acting skills.
And McGregor was actually one of the few that did pretty decent in these.
I agree with that
trilogies.
too.
You could really see, that he made a concerted effort to kind of channel Alec Guinness, without imitating him, but to really kind of get his speech pattern down, to really make it sound like, okay, this is the younger version of Alec Guinness's Obi-Wan Kenobi. And I thought he was pretty game. I thought he was a good sport. He's probably one of the best things. He and Ian McDiarmid, who plays, of course, Palpatine, I think I will single out as the kind of the good apples in an otherwise pretty terribly acted movie.
Well, that's something that I connected to. Was you could tell that he was Alec Guinness was a Cockney Englishman, I should say, and Ewan McGregor being very famous for making one of the most famous Scottish movies of all time, Trainspotting. And he really transformed his speech pattern and the way that he formed his movements after Alec Guinness. And I really greatly appreciated that. It doesn't seem like anyone else was capable of such flattery.
Yeah.
Warren?
I mean, Ewan's performance through the entire prequels, I appreciate the most. This is my favorite of the three, but it has its problems, and Ewan is not one of them.
One of the things I did appreciate about it, and I was joking about, this is going to be a hate cast, but look at the character faces on all of the characters, excluding the ones that kind of look Asian. And I don't mean anyone wearing prosthesis, but everyone has a very original face. Here, of course, that's not Natalie Portman, right? Like Natalie Portman was two people to the right. That's Keira Knightley, which was a trip because I had forgotten that fact. And then we went to see it in the theater. And when you watch this on 35 millimeter on a big screen, you're like, that is definitely Keira Knightley.
Definitely.
Yeah. I mean, that's just plain as day. And it's like they're hiding Portman's mole that she has on her left cheek. Like they're deliberately hiding that.
And then, in Attack of the Clone, you get Rose Byrne, too, as a handmaiden. So.
Yeah. Really?
Right. Who dies, yeah.
She dies in the explosion?
Yeah.
Okay.
So some famous actresses there that portrayed her handmaidens. I think Sofia Coppola is one of the other ones, if I'm not mistaken.
I know she had a cameo in here. Yeah.
I think she's one of the orange handmaidens.
Oh, really? Sofia Coppola is?
Yes.
No shit.
Mm-hmm.
Well, obviously the Lucases and the Coppolas, they're hand in hand.
Yes.
Right.
They live in the same neighborhood in Marin County.
Yeah, I think they married into each other. There was a marriage somewhere in there, I think.
Another thing that I greatly appreciate, which that they did a webisode on this, is the guy that stylized the lightsaber fights was the same guy who taught Errol Flynn how to sword fight for Captain Blood in 1937.
Oh, nice.
Wow.
And he's a Hollywood legend, and he's worked on hundreds of movies that have sword fighting. He's a stunt guy, obviously. And Lucas told him he wanted to go back to basics. He wanted to go back to the Seven Samurai type of thing, and he wanted everything to be more fluid. The first movie is having sort of young boys and old men just kind of slam swords at each other, which I completely agree. Alec Guinness was in his 60s when he did that film. But this one is way more. I mean, like Yojimbo, like Sanjuro, like those 60s Kurosawa films where you don't strike unless you're hitting something. There's no unnecessary swings, right? I see that a lot in the fights, particularly in the end with Darth Maul in the Duel of Fates final scene. No one is swinging a lightsaber unnecessarily. It's always hitting something everywhere it's going.
And that's actually one of the things that I think they kind of came out with as they were trying to fill in this universe, which we suddenly had this huge appetite for. And I think there are 6 or 7 unique and distinct lightsaber fighting styles. And Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon had a particular style, and it's different from Yoda's style. It's different from a lot of the Sith styles, different from Mace Windu's. So each one has kind of their own fighting style that they subscribe to that maybe they didn't invent, but, just like somebody here would be trained in Taekwondo or Judo or Karate or Kung Fu, different kind of styles of the same thing. There's different lightsaber styles, and each one has a name. And don't ask me for the name of what Obi-Wan has, but
this is the infamous scene with horrible acting that had to be reshot, the cockpit scene. Go ahead, Warren.
I just wanted to add if the listeners or both of you are familiar with Rebels, if you've seen Rebels.
I have not. My son watched it, and he said it's better than the prequels.
It's great. And there's what you just mentioned about the different fighting styles come into play. There's a final fight scene between two characters, which I don't want to spoil, and the different formats of fighting come into play in this scene, and it's really something that someone should watch if you're a fan of the lightsaber battles.
I went to Disney World. I want to say it was around, we took the kids. It was around 11 or 12. And you could go into what used to be Downtown Disney, which is now called Disney Springs. And they had in the Disney toy shop, they had an entire collection of lightsabers that you could piece together bit by bit, and you could make your own distinct lightsaber using 30 pieces or whatever. And my son, Luke, of course, was over there trying to build one, and I was trying to convince him, you should have a blue one. He's like, no, I want a red one because Darth Maul's is red. And they had a screen right above it with all of the lightsaber scenes from all of the movies all edited together. It was about, at the time, maybe 15, 17 minutes long. Mm-hmm. And as I sat there and watched the entire thing, I was most impressed with the Duel of Fates.
Yeah.
It was outstanding.
A lot of people love the Revenge of the Sith fight, but to me, I don't think anything matches the end of Phantom Menace. I just can't. There's nothing like it.
It really is just a great kind of combination of, that fighting and John Williams' music.
Definitely.
I think this is, one of the strongest scores of the entire saga. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I think the Duel of Fates, just music, it really was paced perfectly. I know it was kind of intercut with some other things, but yeah, that is something that even the most jaded and cynical Star Wars fan will give you about Phantom Menace.
That the whole third act of this film is really together.
Definitely.
And I really and that's, I think that's what's so confusing is you're bumbling along trying to enjoy it and then trying to go along with it, and then when it takes off, you're like so there, so you leave the theater pumped.
You do.
Right? You're like, oh my God, that was good. And you kind of forget like 2/3 of the way to get there was really confusing, particularly in the second act on Tatooine. It is Tatooine, isn't it?
Yes, it is, yes.
What a slog. Like just what a complete slog. Right. And it's almost like the only reason why we are on Tatooine is because we have to be. I get that in the screenwriting, right?
We need to pick up Anakin, so that's
right.
We're just here for that.
So we must be on Tatooine. And maybe the structure isn't bad, like you have a little adventure in the first act without Anakin, and then you pick up Anakin in the second act, and then he becomes pivotal in the third act. I understand the 1, 2, 3 punch, but I did not like the story that wove through those 3 locations. So we're back to Tatooine, which was in the trailers. And, of course, the poster. You remember the poster?
Of course.
Oh, yeah. That great shot of young Anakin casting a shadow of Darth Vader.
And here's Portman again.
And here you also have Captain Panaka, who I don't know if you remember one of the first kind of fun things to do on the internet in the early 2000s. There was a website you could go to called like punchpanaka.com or something like that, where it was just a picture of his face, and with your mouse you could just punch him until he just gets bloody and bloody. And again, I don't know why he was singled out of all the random characters. He certainly didn't really jump out as either really important or really annoying, but yeah, that was one of the things that we did with the power of Star Wars fandom in the ascending internet age was.
Well, I'm sure it didn't help either that he didn't return for the other films.
Yeah, exactly. Much like Jar Jar, who I think has just a handful of lines in Episode 2, and I think is seen in one funeral shot in Episode 3.
Right.
And Captain Panaka kind of reminds me of what a lot of people wished happened with This Is Why Warren Is Here. Mm-hmm. The dude in Bespin that had the collar around his head. Mm-hmm. What's his name?
Lobot.
Lobot. So you talk about like everyone in 5th and 6th grade talking about Lobot. And this dude who you didn't even know his name because you didn't see him in the credits,
right.
But you bought the character at Toys R Us, and so that's how you knew his name, and it had his backstory on the back. And that dude was fascinating for you. And I see Lucas attempt to do that many times in all 3 movies, trying to create that character like Panaka, and it just not working, not taking off.
Right. Well, I mean, Lobot was one example, and really Boba Fett was the only other, where it was just, here's a minor character that everyone embraces, largely because of the merchandise. And I'm glad you mentioned that because I don't know if either of you participated in the Midnight Madness toy release.
I can tell you great stories about that.
Oh yeah. So I think probably about a week or two before this came out at the theater, Toys R Us said, hey, starting at midnight, we're going to have Episode 1 toys for sale. And I know, our Toys R Us in Austin, Texas, that pretty much just meant they would take those old swimming pools and just fill them with stuff and just put out like 30 of those swimming pools filled to the top with toys. And people just rushed in and bought everything. And I think I bought every single figure. I don't think I had the money to buy every figure and every creature and every ship. But I at least bought one of every action figure when I was there that night. I think they all went on a credit card because I couldn't have afforded to buy that much toys as a college kid. But yeah, so we had all these characters. So our first chance of seeing Boss Nass, of seeing Captain Panaka and stuff like this is like, okay, I have this action figure. And so then you wait and see, well, I hope this guy doesn't suck because I've got an action figure now. And then you see the movie, and in some cases, they do suck.
Here we are with Natalie Portman looking like she's 12. She's not 12. She's 19. But she looks like a 12-year-old. And at this time in the theater, I'm still fooled. I don't know that that's Amidala.
Really?
Yeah, I'm completely an idiot or clueless or whatever.
Okay.
But and I was wondering, I think this might have been a pervasive issue among the audience. Who gives a shit about Padme? Like, I thought Amidala was, right? Mm-hmm. And so I genuinely think there was about 20, 25 minutes there where people are just like, why is she here?
That's again where the action figure kind of comes in, because you had Padme Amidala.
Oh.
So we had maybe a little bit of a spoiler. It was kind of like, I guess if anybody owned the CD with the John Williams score, that actually came out about a week or two before the movie as well. And there's actually a track on the CD called The Death of Qui-Gon. And so, if you are a Star Wars superfan and you were just buying all this stuff even in advance of this movie coming out, there were some plot spoilers that, you just kind of had. And one of them was, that's Padme and Amidala are the same person, and Qui-Gon's not going to make it out of this one.
Okay, and here's the other thing that I remember, which was 24 hours before the premiere. It was leaked online, and I don't remember if it was on a BitTorrent site or what, or the Pirate Bay, but the Phantom Menace, actually a digital copy, was online 24 hours before the premiere came out, and it pissed Lucas off to no end, and he tore Skywalker Ranch apart looking for whoever released it.
If I can go, I hate to correct anybody, but the Padme action figure actually didn't say Padme Amidala.
Oh, didn't? Okay.
No, it said Padme Nabire. That was her.
Okay.
I don't know if it was there to hide her name.
Right.
To be fair, I also had these action figures 6 months before everybody else, which he knows the story, which we'll have to talk about that another time. But so that kind of spoiled a lot of, because once you have the action figures, you know their names and what they are and what they will be. So I unfortunately knew a lot 6 months prior. So.
Yeah, that is definitely something we're going to hit after on the next recording.
And yet, I kind of feel like the original trilogy I would have not had the buy-in had there not been the action figures.
Action figures, we'll probably want to get into this later on, but the action figures is the number one profit maker for Lucasfilm at that time, throughout this era. It definitely stopped in the 2010s, but prior to that, it was making 2 to 3 times more than the films were. So action figures was a priority for Lucas.
Yeah.
And, of course, if you're writing scripts or shooting a movie based on how much money you're going to make in action figures, it's probably you're not paying attention to the story.
No, that is very true. And that probably is why we're seeing so many kind of unique and distinct creatures. No,
this was one of my favorite characters, actually, Sebulba, and I was very happy when I bought Pod Racer on N64. I started off with Sebulba because he had the fastest rig, and then you figured out after one lap you do not want this one because it was all speed and it had nothing else, no control, no brakes, no torque, no nothing.
It sounded so cool though. The sounds on that Pod Racer.
Oh, I love that game. I love that game. Beat it several times. Actually had a ghost. You could race with your previous ghost. It was awesome. And he shot this in Tunisia, right? At the old set.
Yes.
and he did a lot from. He actually shot a lot of the Clone Wars. He shot that at the same time he was out there shooting this. And here's a little clip of him seeing the lightsaber. So he's got a tip off that he's a Jedi.
Right.
And unfortunately, Jake Lloyd, another one of these guys who gets castigated for the decisions that somebody else makes.
Right.
But I like to point out here that as Jar Jar is walking across, he's casting a shadow. Just showing how the digital artists are really paying attention to what's going on.
They really are, yeah. I know this came out. The digital effects were not bad. I think this movie got overshadowed by The Matrix, because they both came out in 1999. I think The Matrix ended up winning every Oscar that Phantom Menace was nominated for, except for maybe score. So it did kind of get overshadowed because that was kind of some new and exciting technology. And although this, the effects I think are fairly good. There's a lot of purely digital characters, which you just really didn't see at that time. It did get overshadowed by The Matrix in a lot of ways.
I think The Mummy was a factor that year too.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely. And 1999 being like a bad year for good movies because there were so many good movies out.
There were a lot.
Fight Club came out and bombed, and now Fight Club is just universally thought of as David Fincher's best film. It was one of the best film of the 90s. The Matrix The Matrix, if I remember correctly, was like it was the first non-franchised movie that people were going back to see multiple times. Like I saw that 3 times in the theater. And by the late 90s, people weren't going back to see movies, but people were going back to see The Matrix.
And The Sixth Sense, because that came out in
that was another one. Yeah, because people were taking their friends like, you've got to see this.
And I think, after you see it, you kind of see the twist, and you go back and you see, okay, well, does it work? So it almost requires a second viewing immediately. So you're right, there's a lot of, 99 really was a great year for movies.
Now, here's another criticism I have, because I was very cognizant of Star Wars operating on 2 different levels when I was a kid. Meaning Star Wars Empire and Jedi, there was a kid mode and an adult mode. And I enjoyed both of them, but the kid mode was R2 and C-3PO, which by the time I got into high school and college, I recognized like this is Rosencrantz and Guildenstern that are leading us through all of these adventures. And I think that was extraordinarily successful. Well, we're denied that for the first half of this film.
That's true.
And then when we have it, they're sort of separated and they're incomplete, and they're not nearly as present in the prequels than they are in the first 3 films. Sorry to say that way, but that's what it is to us. And unfortunately, the mythology takes a stumble here, because why would Anakin be working on a protocol droid for his mom? Like, it makes more sense for him to be stamped out of a factory,
Right. Yeah.
and serving the Empire, right, or the Republic in this circumstance. And so the droid level was taken away from us, robbed from us, and not a whole lot of it made sense.
Well, Lucas had said that, all 3 trilogies he had 4 in mind, but 3 trilogies that the only characters that were going to repeat in all 3 were R2-D2 and C-3PO, and that the story was based on what they saw. And again, it was taken away from us here because now C-3PO is a different character. Basically, he's not that the storyteller duo that we were told that dictated the story of all 3 trilogies.
He also seems to have lost a lot of his mystique. Like I do remember the first time I saw Metropolis in college, silent film from the 1920s by Fritz Lang. And it's so obvious that is the birth of C-3PO, that he lifted it off of there. Mm-hmm. And it just made every subsequent viewing of Star Wars that much more impactful to me, knowing that. And then sort of the mystique is gone in the prequels because of that. It's almost like he took that mystique away.
Right.
And not everything has to connect. We don't have to see, okay, well, C-3PO was made by Anakin. I don't think that adds anything.
It didn't. I don't think at all.
To the overall Skywalker saga.
To quote Sheldon from The Big Bang Theory, I like the things that I like. I don't need a reason to like them.
Well,
I think that might be paraphrasing. Skywalker.
Mm-hmm.
So there's an entire tone of this film which is kind of lost in the Clone Wars. But the Clone Wars, I think, is colored by Afghanistan. And I think Revenge of the Sith is kind of colored by Iraq. But there's a whole tone to all three of them, and particularly the Phantom Menace, which is more childlike in nature. And Lucas has said, how he really intended this for kids. But I'm picking up, particularly in this scene, like there's not a scene like this in the other three films.
There's not.
It does not feel like the first three films are made for children. It just doesn't.
And I was born the year A New Hope came out, but I remember seeing it at the theaters and the subsequent re-releases to kind of get people ready for Empire and get people ready for Jedi. Luke and Leia seemed young enough for us to identify with. They were teens, and maybe I was 6. I didn't feel like I needed to have a 6-year-old on screen to buy in as a kid. So yeah, I think it's a curious choice, introducing us to Anakin this young.
Well, I know it was a high contention for the Lucasfilm board. They didn't want a child, Anakin, in this film, but Lucas obviously overrode.
Really?
That. Yes. So.
Wow. No, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And here, in another one of the webisodes that you can see on the bonus disc, they talked about how they actually interviewed 10,000 kids for the role of Anakin. Now that is an enormous surge.
Right. Well, it's a big deal. It's a big character to have to cast. I mean,
and I guess at this point, there's no guarantee that, or there's probably the possibility of it being Anakin in 3 different movies, right?
Right.
I don't know if it was a knock on Jake Lloyd or just they had to advance the storytelling more than 3 years to where they had to recast.
I think one of my biggest things with Anakin being a child in this film is that when we learn about the stories of Anakin through Obi-Wan, he talks about him being a great pilot when they first met. So you think he's an adult when they first met,
right? And
he's already taking on the galaxy and things like that, which we see a lot of Anakin in that role in the Clone Wars cartoon, but not in the films and until he's older. And I think that's what we expected to happen right off the bat, and not this growth from a child to ascend to this Dark Lord that we all come to know as Darth Vader.
I think I understand what he was trying to do in giving us a kid. It's kind of like, Hitler was a child too type of thing. And it forces you to accept that not everybody turns out to be this genocidal maniac, right. Younglings and things like that. But I think that this could have just started off differently. It really could have started off with a preteen or a teenager.
I think they went a little too far back, a little too innocent. And, kind of to re-quote what you were saying about Sheldon, right? I like what I like. I don't need a reason to. I think Darth Vader is probably one of the most beloved villains.
Yes.
And he's one of the few that we could say, hey, he's horrible. I love it. And so I don't think we needed to go back to something so completely opposite of Darth Vader.
Well, I never got the idea from the first films that Darth Vader was a genocidal maniac. He was an enforcer.
Right.
That was the idea that I had, just like any James Bond villain has an enforcer. Goldfinger had Oddjob, and that's what Darth Vader was. And you can like Goldfinger all you want, but really you like Oddjob.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the first film, Star Wars, really shows us that he's just this henchman there to help Grand Moff Tarkin, and ultimately there's an Emperor, of course. But until later, Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi, we learn he's got a bigger role, but homicidal maniac, not definitely not.
Right. So here we, I think, learn. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think is this the scene we learn that Anakin was a virgin birth?
Right.
So how'd you guys feel about that?
I just thought too far.
It almost makes him being a child now even more irrelevant, because if he's already special, why do we have to see him at a young age, an innocent child to turn into what he becomes. It almost makes his being a child irrelevant to me.
The one thing I will say that I've kind of come around a little bit more on this, and it did take some kind of supplemental reading in reading some of the old Star Wars books that are no longer canon, like Darth Plagueis, or even some of the ones that are now considered canon, which are like, Palpatine's backstory. And I think when you realize kind of Palpatine has got this long con, kind of this he's playing the long game here, and his mastery of different elements of the Force, I think if anyone can kind of arrange a convergence of midichlorians, I can't believe I actually said that sentence, right? To where he can almost kind of create human life. And I also suspect that he had the same ability to almost destroy human life in kind of killing Padme at the end of Episode 3. That's kind of the only thing I can maybe appreciate a little bit is kind of the long game of Palpatine kind of arranging a virgin birth. I think if there's anybody with any Sith with the power to do that, he could. Now, was George Lucas thinking that in 1999 as he was making this movie? I don't think so. I'm probably giving too much credit with that theory. But it's kind of, rewriting history a little bit, rewriting mythology here a little bit. I choose to believe that is what was going on.
Well, and I did see an interview with somebody in Lucasfilm, and I forgive me for not knowing who it was, saying that, well, the midichlorians were an indicator. It wasn't because of the midichlorians that they had all this force. It was, and so when he says Yoda, even Master Yoda doesn't have that many, it was just that because he was so powerful in the force, the midichlorians were a result of it, not the cause of it. And if that was the case, fine. Tell me that when you're telling me the story.
Exactly. You don't have to have the wonderful classic line, what's a midichlorian? Yeah.
Right. Well, Lucas will go back on that a few years later and say that it's the amount of training that you have that enables you to connect with the Force at a different level. It isn't actually the midichlorian count. So,
yeah, would have been nice to know that in the first hour.
Yeah, definitely.
And here we just missed some of the high quality Jar Jar hijinks of getting his tongue caught in the power couplers there.
Well, and some of it looks quite bad, like when they're at the dinner table and Qui-Gon catches his tongue. It just looks horrible.
Oh, I cringe at that scene. Yeah. Here's that classic midichlorian discussion.
Yeah, and he happens to have a midichlorian tester on his belt, on his utility belt, just like every good Jedi, I guess.
That's very helpful.
And doesn't bother to get consent from his mother before he takes the sample.
Different times.
Yeah.
Well, they are on the outer rim.
I was just about to say.
That's right.
And of course, the Hutts are around.
Right.
Well, that was another aspect of the film that I think that everybody was really excited about, was you sort of got to see Tatooine and this Hutt rule,
Yeah. And they were almost chill about that. Like, they didn't kind of push it to the front. So they actually exercised a little bit of restraint. Like, yeah, that's control. Here's a shot of it.
I'm just not a big fan of him having the ability to move around. I think we all believed in the 80s that he was just stuck on that platform, and to have him move in this special edition and then in this film, I wasn't a fan of that.
I get that.
Well, and there was a mystique about Jabba that because he was so big and so powerful and he was this obese worm, it sort of gave you an indicator that when he was a younger creature, he must have been just absolutely ruthless. And that was why everyone obeyed him, right? Like when he hits Bib Fortuna and knocks him over and so forth. But when you see him move and walk in this, he sort of loses that mystique. It's better not to show it.
I think so.
Now here, of course, is the wonderful Ray Park,
yeah.
who was a stunt coordinator and a stuntman for many, many years. And they were training these fight scenes, and Lucas was looking for somebody to play Darth Maul. And they went through, if I remember correctly, several actors to try to get them to the level. And then he just decided, it'd just be a lot easier if Ray Park did all the stunt work, and we just since we're putting makeup on him anyway.
Right.
And then just alter his voice, or record another voice over his.
Yeah, I had a chance to meet him at a convention.
Oh, do tell.
Yes. So it's a really cool guy, a lot smaller than you'd think. So here's my story. I think it was probably like the 2005, 2006. Before everybody had a reliable camera on their cell phone. I think I had a digital camera there. So a buddy of mine who I worked with, his cousin was a Lucasfilm artist, kind of not working on the movies, but officially licensed, would draw some of the trading cards and things like that. And he had a table there. And because we had the hookup, we went up to Dallas for this convention. And, we had some backstage passes and stuff to do some things. And we actually went out to a bar afterwards, and Ray Park was there along with David Prowse. And so it's like I posed for a picture with the two of them, a Sith Lord on either side, and it did not come out. Because that unreliable early aughts digital camera, the battery just died. I knew I had just enough. I was hoping I had enough for one more picture. So yeah, I had a picture with two Sith Lords. But yeah, Ray Park, very nice guy. Heard him talk in a panel, and yeah, he's much smaller than you'd think.
Let me guess, it was a Sony Elf.
A little bit bigger than the Sony Elf, but yeah.
So Watto, you mentioned before about him being this really horrible representation of a Jewish stereotype.
Very Shylock kind of, extreme.
Very greedy and the long nose. This was another one of those things that I kind of missed in the theater, but when I played the pod racing game and Watto would come out during the menus so that you could purchase parts for your pod racer, and Watto had extra lines. People come in here and they come in here and they want to buy things and they don't want to pay a lot of money. And I just thought that was when it hit me. Like, this is not good.
Outlanders, they come here. How do they find me? They come here. They mess up my store. Hey! Maybe you'll find what you need out of back in the junkyard.
My son last year took a course on Nazi cinema and he saw the film Yud Seuss, which is horrible. And when he saw that film later on, I think it was about a week or two later, he said, "Dad, you remember Watto and the Phantom Menace?" I said, "Yeah." And he said, "That's Yud Seuss." I was like, oh, God. So even he was able to make that parallel. That's not positive. Particularly, what's shocking about this is that this is a Hollywood film,
Right.
And everyone who saw this, and a lot of people saw this before it came out. Yeah. Nobody said anything.
Yeah. And that's the thing, is you have these digital characters where you have to actually record the voice in a studio long before. It's not like you're on set or anything like that. There must have been multiple opportunities with Watto, with Nemoidians, with Jar Jar to say, you know what? I don't think we're striking the right tone here.
They come here, they look around, they no buy. Why nobody buy?
This is one of my favorite scenes in the movie. I have watched just this pod racing scene multiple times. I used to just back up the DVD and just watch it over and over again. If I remember correctly, it's about 9 minutes long because each lap is about long. 3.5 minutes.
You got Greg Proops there, improv comedian from Whose Line Is It Anyway? As the English.
Oh, I know Greg. Yeah.
So again, that was a little that's cool, but kind of weird. Yeah.
Mid to late 90s, he was on Whose Line a lot.
Yeah.
Very skillful. This whole thing, of course, and a lot of people complain, and I don't know why they're complaining about this, but they say, well, this is just a ripoff from Ben-Hur, which I say, great.
Yeah.
Fantastic ripoff from Ben-Hur.
Good praise. We have some other cameos here. I think you see Warwick Davis show up in one of these shots. Yeah. Which, I think one of the technicalities here, Warwick Davis being in so many Star Wars, so many Harry Potters, is officially the highest grossing actor of all time. I don't know. That's
and Willow, don't forget.
And Willow, yeah, I'm sure Willow added,
both Willows
added $40 million to that multi-billion-dollar haul there. Yeah.
Yeah, for a while it was the actor Ronnie Cox during the 80s and 90s. Yeah, because he'd been Total Recall and Beverly Hills Cop, and
then I know Samuel L. Jackson kind of.
Oh, that's right.
Because he did Jurassic Park as well.
Right.
And I guess somebody said Stan Lee. I guess if you just add just the cameos and all the Marvel movies. But, yeah. Of course, Warwick Davis had been in Return of the Jedi as Wicket. Mm-hmm. I think they managed to get him one more cameo somewhere.
And Kenny Baker, I would imagine.
Yeah, because he was in.
Well, that's why Warwick Davis was Wicket. It was supposed to be.
Kenny Baker,
right? He became ill that day, so Warwick Davis took the role that day only because.
Oh, no kidding!
Was ill. He must have been pretty young.
He was very young. Yeah.
I do know that there was a professional troupe of dwarf actors in the UK that became like the go-to not because, well, obviously, if you need a dwarf, you're limited in your casting abilities, but these guys were like so good.
Right.
And Time Bandits by Terry Gilliam, it had like 8, like 5 of those 6 were from that acting troupe.
Right.
And those guys were able to do Star Wars. They were able to do a lot of the Harry Potter films and so forth. And Warwick Davis, I believe, was in that group.
I think he was.
And Kenny Baker is in Time Bandits. Yeah.
Of course, I remember reading I think Anthony Daniels' autobiography. He and Kenny Baker did not get along at all. At all. No, they did not get along at all.
What I like about Anthony Daniels.
Yeah.
Right. Just want to make sure I'm lucky I've got you two here. And here comes Jabba and Bib Fortuna. Any interview you see with Anthony Daniels, it's like any interview you see with Bill Nye, that actor. They're always like wearing a coat with a button shirt. It's like they are primordial Englishmen.
Oh,
right?
Totally.
Like you almost expect a little table to be off to the left with some tea in it.
Yep. And he got the part. He was a mime mostly, but also an actor. And he was helping. He really was kind of hired as almost as a model. I think George Lucas wanted something like Metropolis, and he was that right size where he was kind of a smaller build, where he was just kind of a model for different things. And then they got so used to him wearing the suit as they were building it that they gave him the part. And so that's kind of how he got into it.
By the way, Warren, I do want to tell you that if ever we're off the map, please correct us.
I'm not a big fan of doing that, but I am a proponent of facts. So if I do that, please don't take offense.
Well, if any franchise is littered with misinformation, it is this one.
Definitely.
So please call us out.
Well, there's a lot of stuff that you just there's information on the original trilogy that you can't Google. You either had to live through it or known someone that worked on the films, and I've talked to many people that worked on the films. I don't manufacture the information I get. Either it's fact or I don't say it. So
there is the two authoritative podcasts that I've heard on Star Wars. There's one on Star Wars, and there's a second one on The Empire Strikes Back, which is both of them are on the Projection Booth podcast feed. And they're both like 4 or 5 hours, and they're all very interesting. I didn't realize the guy who shot, Let's Do the Time Warp Again, the Rocky Horror Picture Show. The same cinematographer shot The Empire Strikes Back.
Oh, wow.
Interesting.
So here's Warwick Davis right there. He's our hero.
Next to Watto, yeah.
What a great guy. So look at that. That was amazing. And I don't remember when A Bug's Life came out. It might have been before this.
It was.
But there's that scene in A Bug's Life where the circus master hits the camera and he smudges the camera, and the camera's like a little foggy right where his nose hits. That's pretty amazing when you consider there is no camera.
Right.
And when you look at these shots, I think this is kind of the first completely CGI shots in which you see the camera just kind of rattle a little bit as if that camera is actually mounted onto a prop and is hitting real bumps. Any other thing, like even in Ben-Hur, you see that sort of soft rattling motion. And in every other film up until this, I think the tendency is to really just make it as smooth as possible for the viewer. Right, unless you're making like a cinema verite type of thing where you're kind of rocking the camera, and of course after Blair Witch that just gets stupid and crazy with Cloverfield and all of that. But here it's just soft enough to focus your attention and keep you into the action. It's not too crazy to throw you out.
The same illness that I felt, and Blair Witch, I wanted to vomit. So I think this is a little bit easier, and boy, this looked great on the big screen. Sounded great too.
Definitely,
I think this is one of the best. Just
like when we were in the theater a few months ago, the sound was amazing.
Yeah, you can't dispute the sound in this film.
Well, and that's a great contribution that Lucas has made is the THX certification.
Definitely.
Which I remember growing up and thinking the sound in this theater sucks. Mm-hmm. The General Cinema in Baybrook Mall was just horrible sound. The GC that was at Alameda Mall, the 4 screens outside and 2 screens inside, that one was horrible. Mars Guo was my pod racer in the N64 game. I was always Mars Guo.
And so as you see this, you see the Tusken Raiders kind of firing at the...
the pot shots.
That was fun.
You'll not find a better deal anywhere, I think, huh?
Yeah. And then here, the little droids getting sucked into the engine and having a blowout.
Didn't mind this. You saw, there's a shot maybe a couple of minutes ago, you saw Aura Singh, who's kind of a famous, mysterious bounty hunter. I think it's the only time we see her in one of the actual movies.
It is.
I'm not mistaken. I know she plays a bigger part in some of the animated shows.
Right. Great looking character. I just wish they had done more on film.
Yeah, I think they refer to her in Solo as Woody Harrelson's character is reputed to have killed her. Or as he said, the fall killed her. I just gave her a little push.
Kind of sinister.
Yeah.
There's also a part, I don't know if we passed it or if it's coming up, where R2's head rotates and it pops up off the bearings. I noticed it when we saw it a couple months ago. It barely pops off and you can see it. It's insignificant, but
well, at the same time, you see something turning inside 3PO's head.
Right.
You do, yeah.
It's a nice detail, and it's some sort of gyroscope that's keeping him balanced or something, which is kind of funny when you see that 3PO is constantly kind of like moving side to side, like he's trying to keep his balance.
I don't think any of us had a problem with us seeing kind of the naked C-3PO. I think we just wish baby Anakin hadn't built it.
Right. I think that's right. Through the canyons. I was also amazed in the pod racing game just like how very similar it was to the film, particularly this track, which is the only track we see in the films.
Now, Warren, let me ask you this. I mean, I know which canyons are these, and are these the same canyons that Luke used to shoot womp rats at?
I do not believe they are the same ones.
Okay.
Because this is
Beggar's Canyon.
This is not Beggar's Canyon, and I think because this is near Mos Espa, which is not near Mos Eisley. So,
right.
It's just a different kind of area attached.
It's on the far side of the planet, right?
Something like that, yeah.
Here comes the GIF that became famous. The it's working, which I still use to this day to describe equipment that has given me problems, and then I conquer it, whether it's a keyboard or a forklift. Back into the canyons.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, one quick thing about C-3PO too is that when he makes that statement in the first film, "Thank the Maker," I don't think he intended it to be Darth Vader as the Maker. You know what I mean? I don't think that's where we believed it to be.
Well, I guess he has his memory wiped at the end of Episode 3. It doesn't seem like R2-D2 does.
He does not, which doesn't really make a lot of sense. But
well, that goes back to the whole mountain of inconsistencies that you have, which people thought, well, geez, wouldn't you know? You wrote the first 3 films, and I know he had help, but...
Right.
Well, and I guess some of them, they almost kind of back themselves into a corner and address things kind of awkwardly. I remember when I saw this, one of the first things I thought was, okay, well, how does Uncle Owen come in, right? Because Anakin's supposed to have a brother, right? Or else Luke wouldn't have an uncle. And I guess they did kind of address that awkwardly in the second and then later the third film. But
I just think George tried to tie too much together that didn't need to be. It just didn't have. It was unnecessary.
He didn't have to be a slave. She didn't have to be a slave. You can be poor on Tatooine. I think that's enough for everybody.
Right.
It was just too much stuff thrown in. Kind of like Highlander 2: The Quickening. There's too much stuff thrown in. It's just. It can be very simple and very good. The two-headed sportscaster is genius.
It's funny to note too that the audience in the podcasting scene was 450,000 colored Q-tips.
Really?
Then they digitally made changes after that. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Well, and I remember just like a year or two before this in the X-Files they had the first use of patching where they can't get 500 people for a stadium shot. So they would take 50 extras, put them in the stadium and group them together, and then they would patch them, move them over, and then shoot again, move them over, shoot them again, then move them up, and they would fill the stadium that way, work like 3 hours, and it would look like a full stadium. And that was the first time they would sort of patch crowds like that.
I saw a documentary sometime in the 90s where they talked about what ILM was doing, and they had this shot of like 12 marching soldiers, and then they would just like copy and paste them over and over again, so you see this huge group of soldiers when it was really originally 12. I mean, it's pretty amazing.
Oh, the artistry in the CGI is fantastic. When I see the panels inside the pod, that switches that actually turn, buttons that actually push down, I mean, that's Stanley Kubrick like detail,
right?
That I'm very impressed with. This was in the trailer, that shot there going through the loops. The trailer that we only watched about 5,000 times.
Oh yeah,
but nobody can say that once they saw that trailer that they weren't in. We were all in.
I was all in,
absolutely,
200%.
Yeah,
it was a massively edited trailer too. It was. I think it showed us just enough, and it looked like it was from the universe we knew. But earlier there were some things that just, I think it struck all the right notes.
Well, and somebody, of course, I don't think it was about 6 months later or a year later, they did the Phantom edit, which is they took out the 22 minutes that had Jar Jar in it.
Yeah.
Which I can imagine, again, if you're Ahmed Best, then how's that going to make you feel?
Oh, sure.
It's a shitty thing to do.
Well, I think that's another thing why I have issues with the special editions, as he's eliminated work that people did because he didn't like how the shots turned out, and he wanted to make them better. And essentially, I think a lot of those shots aren't better, even though they're CGI. I think just all these model makers and ILM staff that did this. I mean, hours and hours and hours of work, grueling work that wasn't being done in the industry at all, and it's just that work is erased.
I'm really amazed. I remember at the 25th anniversary of Star Wars, when they all went on the tour of the press tour, and particularly Carrie Fisher, Harrison Ford, and Mark Hamill, and for the first time I saw B-roll. The B-roll shots they were running behind the camera sets from 1977, or I guess they shot it in 76. And you saw the set, and you saw the set end, and then you saw the studio in which the set was built in. And then for the first time you saw Mark Hamill walk off the floor onto plywood. And that broke the reality for me for the first time. It occurred to me, oh shit, this is not real. And that was in my late 20s, right? Like, oh my God, this is actually they showed where Luke and Leia swing across that enormous canyon inside the Death Star.
And they're only 10 feet off the ground.
Right, and it's painted, right? Of course it's painted. It's a mat. Of course it's a mat. And you saw the mat next to the camera, and you just thought, that is so genius. That is so well done. It fooled me for 2.5 decades, right? It took someone showing me evidence in order to break that in my mind, to think that the compactor is not real. Right. That is extreme artistry. That is dedication to their work.
Well, if I could just segue really quick, I don't want to go too much into special edition stuff, but there are changes that VFX changes that he made. I agree with, but I still think that we as consumers and fans should have access to the original versions and the version that he wants us to see. I think we should have access to it. But one of the shots that I agree with, which involves matte paintings, is at the ceremonial scene of A New Hope. At the end, when they're walking down the stairs, it's a matte painting of the rebels on before they head down the stairs. Well, for the special editions, because the quality of the footage would have made it too clear that it was a matte painting, George reshot it with people. So there are now people there. So there's certain things that he did. I can understand why he did them, but there are many that I just don't agree with.
I completely understand that. One of the most controversial things that happened on DVD in the last 20 years is when they decided to put Star Trek on Blu-ray. And all that stuff that was shot on, 12 frames per second, and then, plastic monsters and planets that glow in the dark, that it just looked like shit. It just looked like shit. And Paramount took the extraordinary step of, okay, so we want to make it look good, but we don't want to change the story or and they were very cognizant of the whole Star Wars fiasco. And so I sat and watched the original series. And at first they released it on the HD DVD. Remember those when they existed for 6 months? Mm-hmm. And I still have them. So when the Enterprise is, and so they found the original Enterprise from the 60s in storage, and they brought it out and then they scanned it. And then they put that into a computer, and then they took the planet from whatever insert shot it was. And back in the 60s, of course, they just shot that once, and they just changed the filter when they went to a different planet for a different episode, right? Now it's blue, now it's green, now it's got polka dots. And so they did all that with the same perspective, with the same colors, and they just softened it up a bit so that it wouldn't look like shit. And I'm all for that. That's something that you have to do when you're moving from a 16 millimeter camera to a Blu-ray 4K transfer or something of that nature. Right. You're going to have to do stuff like that.
Right. Yeah. That's in keeping with kind of like a digital facelift, I think.
Yeah. Well, that serves the story. Yeah. That helps the story. I didn't think that Han shooting first served the story, and I thought all the Bespin stuff, like all the windows that pop up in Beston as they're trying to flee at the end, I didn't think that helped. I already knew where they were.
I didn't think it hurt. I think that was my least contentious of all the changes. Yeah. I think Han shooting first was that was a big one, and the addition of that awkward Jabba scene where. I think we were aware, and I think we'd even seen, even in like the 80s, that was one of the few deleted scenes we could see.
Right.
And it was obviously that Jabba was an actor. He was a human. And then, he went back and inserted that scene that added nothing except for to say, I don't know. I don't know if that was just a marketing gimmick to say, hey, we're re-releasing this, and it's not enough to just re-release it. I have to add something to get you all back in the seats when I think we would have gone.
Well, I don't know if you guys know this, but the Phantom Menace was initially slated to release in 97, the 20th anniversary of Star Wars. George was behind on the script, so the movie got pushed to 99. The re-release, non-special edition, just the re-release of the original trilogy was to take place in 96. So 96, you have that. Then you have the Phantom Menace the next year. Because there was a delay, they moved the special editions to 97, and in 96 they had a hole. They had already met with licensees. They had this whole, this whole entertainment platform of Star Wars that they had to meet. So they created Shadows of the Empire. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with that. It's expanded universe, but they did a video game, they did a book, they did comic books, they did a soundtrack. Basically, the absence of a film to fill that slot of that year. So that's what took place during that time. So initially we were supposed to get the film at the 20th anniversary, but it got pushed.
Gotcha. Interesting. When did they announce that this was coming out? Because I remember there being just so much anticipation, but I'm trying to think, when did they announce? When did we?
It was like right after Jedi left the screens for the re-releases.
Well, so there was. I think Jeff and I had talked about it via text, but I think in 91, George was working on sound mixing for Jurassic Park. He stumbled, kind of saw what they were doing with CGI, the dinosaurs, and that's when he was like, I'm going to do this. I think he made a statement that year, and then in 92 in the Star Wars Insider, it was the Lucasfilm Fan Club, I think at the time, he came out and publicly said, we're moving forward with making the prequels. So roughly 92, I'd say.
Okay. But there was a big announcement.
Right.
I want to say like when they re-released Jedi, and I want to say it was 96 or 97 yeah. And it was like, we're doing this. It's coming out in 2 years, and the fucking world went nuts.
Yeah.
Right.
And I do remember, I think it was like the Thursday before the release, Lucas actually was, I think he was on Entertainment Tonight, and he was like, everybody just needs to calm down. Like he actually made a public appeal of it. Everybody just take a breath. It's just a movie. And the cultural impact, like just imagine if this was as good as Empire.
Right.
It would have been a bullet hole in cinema history. It would have been the most amazing thing storytelling wise. I don't know, since Gone with the Wind or The Wizard of Oz or something that impactful, And it unfortunately it does stumble.
I think it is fair to say this was the most anticipated movie of my lifetime.
Definitely. I think that's very easy to say. And now it's, they're remaking the entire Harry Potter franchise on TV.
Right.
You expect me to get excited about it.
Right. And this really was, I think, kind of, again, the birth of kind of the huge interconnected Star Wars fandom. Again, I know there was Star Wars Insider and Lucas Fan Club, and maybe you knew a couple people close by, that were Star Wars fans. But this is where we really just kind of felt just the size and the enormity of the fan base.
Yeah, I mean, after Jedi, there was no fan cohesion. I mean, the fan club started up again in '87. We had the role-playing game, which gave us a lot of backstory. And really, we didn't have much till '91 when Heir of the Empire came out. And then from there, it just kind of ramped up. I mean, there were so many factors involved. It wasn't just the releases. There was merchandising and toys and comics that pushed us. Conventions, of course.
There was a diagonal wipe there from the bottom right-hand side of the screen to the top left-hand side of the screen. I think this is really important to bring up that in the editing, of course, George Lucas was an editor. He knows how to edit, and we can expound on Marcia Lucas's extreme contribution to cinema history when she edited the other films. But Lucas is doing something with the wiping. Like every time he wipes to the enemy, he actually wipes off center, and when he wipes to the good guys, he wipes directly left to right and then up and down. It's just something after you watch it 5,000 or 6,000 times, you pick up on.
Interesting.
And I don't remember if that's in the first film or not, but I remember that one being irises and then squares and left to right, up down.
Right.
Just very traditional. But in the Phantom Menace, I just very specifically remember some diagonal wipes, which they just look out of place because you don't see them.
Well, I'm a big Marcia Lucas fan, and just to bring her up really quickly, I think her absence in the prequels is why it's so drastically different than the original trilogy. A lot of people think that she just edited the original trilogy. Yes, she won an Oscar for the first film, but she was in almost every meeting. She was co-chairman of Lucasfilm. She was involved in a lot of the scenes that Lucas, these crazy ideas that Lucas had, and kind of talked George out of doing those things. Her impact is a lot bigger than a lot of people think, and she's very humble about it. But I mean, I think her presence is absent in these films.
Well, I don't think that. I think Marcia Lucas is showing a lot of her, not just her technical skill set. I think she's showing a lot of her social skill set to choose not to get into a public fight with her ex-husband.
Right.
And it's unfortunately left to a lot of us to pontificate and do research or X, Y, or Z to figure out what exactly her contributions are. But when you hear stories about the first screening in '77 when Brian De Palma and Martin Scorsese saw it in New York, and they were the first ones to say, George, that you're going in the wrong direction here, and you've got to, in that collaboration, not just from his friends, but especially from Marcia on a day-to-day basis, he lost all of that. And instead, he was replaced by Rick McCallum, who the first thing he said was, while he was reading the first script for the Clone Wars, of George, you've got to cut Jar Jar out of this as much as possible. Like the fans are just not buying him. That was the first time I remember reading anything in which somebody drew a line for George. Like up until that point, it was free range, right? Mm-hmm. And he needed a lot of limitations in this film, unfortunately. Terrence Stamp, Ian McDormand, what fine actors we have in this film.
Yes.
And look at that background. You know, that's obviously a blue screen. I mean, today.
But look at the shadows.
Yeah.
I mean,
and I love Coruscant. I mean,
I do
it's
too.
just a really cool, visually striking planet. I mean, great idea. You have all these different worlds, and to have a world be an entire city, hundreds of stories down, with so many levels and layers. I think it was a good addition to kind of the universe that's being built. And this is the first time we get to see it here. I know we saw it like a little hint of it at the end of the special edition of Jedi.
Right.
Well, in the
Batman, which came out I think 2 years ago, I did see for the first time the 360, well, I think it was 270 degree LED screen, which
the volume.
Yeah, where they, instead of a green screen, they used an LED screen and they programmed it to look like the background, and that was sort of the first time that I had seen. They probably used it in several things that I had not seen or did not know about, but that was the first time I had seen something like that. If you look at this shot, what an amazingly detailed, I mean, that's like a moving matte painting of Coruscant there. And I do love Coruscant.
And that shot kind of evokes almost like the Death Star trenches.
Well, when I see the top of that building, it reminded me of Blade Runner, of the spinner coming down on the LAPD headquarters.
Well, the Jedi Temple here has some resemblance to the Emperor's Tower on the second Death Star. Not completely, but there are some similarities. I'm not sure if they were intentional.
That's interesting.
I would assume they were, but...
So, and then you see things like this headless statue that's in the back behind Palpatine, and you just have to wonder, is that supposed to evoke something? You see this huge circle that's right behind Amidala. Is he trying to say she is a mother by like evoking the popular symbol of a womb from the ancient world? Like, that's probably too deep for George Lucas.
This is probably the 10th time I've seen this. I never even noticed those statues, I'll be honest.
There's a funny scene that my wife Melissa and I had noticed when we saw the screening 2 months ago, right coming up here, where he has this like Willy Wonka moment where he's like, "Oh no, please don't do that. Oh no." I never noticed it before. She brought it up to me, and we just kind of laughed about it. But
yeah, don't go to court. Yeah, don't go back to Naboo. Yeah, it is like Willy Wonka. Yeah. You're right.
Please, Your Majesty, stay here where it's safe.
Yeah. There's a temple there.
Yeah, it's very similar. The tower.
It does. It's almost like it's got minarets around it, like a mosque. Mm-hmm. Which is kind of funny considering the Lego situation that we had with Jabba's palace, that somebody got pissed off at because they said Jabba's palace looks too much like a mosque, so therefore you're trying to say that Jabba is a Muslim, which I was just like, what?
Yeah.
So they discontinued it. I have it actually.
So here's the Yoda puppet.
So that's not CGI. That's a puppet.
That's a puppet. Yeah.
And then we have Yaddle too.
Right. The female of the same race.
Yeah.
Right.
I think Yaddle would have been lost to history had Grogu not come along. There's a female and a male Yoda, and then there's Grogu.
There's a great episode from Tales of the Jedi that features Yaddle. It's a really good episode.
Oh, good.
You seem to watch it. Yeah.
I need to watch that.
She speaks normal. She doesn't speak like him. So.
Now, I do have to say, I might say one of my criticisms, which is going to sound really strange. Samuel L. Jackson, to me, was a bit much. And I'm going to say that just as kindly as I can. But he was the biggest hitter in this film when it came out.
Yeah, he was.
And that's easy to say now, but even in the 90s, since Pulp Fiction, Samuel L. Jackson's career was so amazing to watch. And he had a multi-ethnic draw to the point to where people would go see a film just because he was in it. Like that stinker he made with Ben Affleck, Changing Lanes or whatever it was.
Right.
I didn't go to see Ben Affleck. I went to see Samuel L. Jackson. Right. And he was a cross-cultural audience phenomenon. And even though we have Terrence Stamp, and even though we got Jimmy Smits, and even though if you're English, you knew who Ian McDormand was, Liam Neeson, Ewan McGregor, which was a huge... Ian McGregor had 2 hits before this movie came out, right? This was to me like, okay, now we have reached the point to where anyone can be in a Star Wars film.
Right.
And he got Samuel L. Jackson because he could afford Samuel L. Jackson, basically. And I really felt that about the other 2 movies, where you're just loaded with people. When in fact, in A New Hope, the only actor that anyone recognizes in that film is Peter Cushing
Alec Guinness, I think.
and Alec Guinness.
Right.
Yeah,
but yeah, those two.
those two who were way past their prime,
Right.
and were not working at a discount. They had a rate that Lucas could afford. And it's the same in the second movie, and it's the same in the third movie. Like, Billy D. Williams had been in a lot of television and played cops and was in the Nighthawks with Sylvester Stallone, but he was not an enormously popular actor. And I do appreciate that when you get to A Force Awakens, they do try to kind of reset the clock on that and find new talent.
That is true. That is something that, and I think it kind of served it well. Having some fresh faces in there.
But I also don't think, one of the great tragedies is that those films just don't have anything to do with John Boyega, who's such a fine actor.
Yeah.
And they just waste his time, it seems like. This is like if you thought the UN was a nightmare. The Republic chamber, the Senate chamber just looks...
I only love this scene because you get to see the ET species.
That was a great.
That's the only appreciation I have for this scene in the Senate.
I will say that the only time I enjoy being in the Senate chamber is in the fight in the third movie between
Yoda and Palpatine.
Yes, that was spectacular.
Yes,
and I do also remember on the bonus disc of the Clone Wars. There's a scene in which you can see the digital animators making the fight between Yoda and Count Dooku. And George is reviewing like the first cut of it. And he's giving instructions and he's saying, now look, if we make the wrong move here, this could look ridiculous. And I do not want Yoda looking ridiculous.
So there's those ETs that
just passed.
Yeah.
And no one will appreciate that more than a Star Wars fan. Right. And I remember when that fight happened, when his lightsaber came off his belt and he hit it his hand, that the entire audience went crazy.
Yeah, we did.
It was nuts. And I just wish that Lucas had that forethought on the screenplay. Because look at this shot here of Coruscant.
Yeah,
look how fantastic. This is gorgeous. I mean, that's a painting. You could put that on your wall.
I do like the idea of the Jedi Council. I think it's pretty cool to see the Jedi Masters kind of all in one place.
Yeah, and at the same time, I just feel like this is like the test that Bill Murray gave those students in Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
It's a couple of wavy lines.
Is that all it takes?
To be a Jedi?
Yeah.
You don't want to test his midichlorians?
Yeah, throw something at him and see if he can knock it away. One thing I did realize in the re-release is that I guess I am now the age that Liam Neeson was when this came out. So 47 now. I think he was 47 when he filmed this. That's like, okay. I kind of, as I reach middle age, I kind of check myself with milestones, and one of those is I'm now the Qui-Gon Jinn of my life.
And Liam Neeson at this point had been nominated twice. He was a big star in the 90s.
He'd been nominated for Schindler's List, and he'd made
Darkman.
Roy. He'd made Darkman.
A very underappreciated film.
I believe so.
Yeah. He dated Julia Roberts for a little bit, I think. I know he made like Mystic Pizza or something like that. Or Satisfaction, one of those early Pretty Woman Julia Roberts movies. So yeah, he
married Natasha Richardson.
Yeah.
Jar Jar has been criticized for having ears that are reminiscent of Jamaican cornrows.
Without the accent, I don't know that I would have put those two together. Right.
Right. I think that by itself it means nothing. With the accent, it makes you think. Now, you guys are going to have to help me here. Like, was that Portman?
That is Portman.
Okay. It's probably Knightley's like in the left or right there.
And I love all her costumes in this movie.
Oh yeah, costumes are fantastic.
I saw the inside of that damn dress that had those glow
the lights
bubbles on it. It was incredible.
You can actually, when she's facing out the window, you can see the cord plugged into the wall. Yeah. Somehow that was missed.
McDormand seems to be. I think they hit him with some white makeup too, just to make him look more chalky. Of course, she's just.
So he must have been under a lot of makeup in the early 80s, because here we are, like I said, 16, 17 years later, and he doesn't look that old.
Yeah.
I mean, he looks younger than he did, and obviously, Emperor Palpatine was under a lot of makeup, but I was surprised at how young he was when this came out.
Yeah, I was too.
Yeah, this is the scene where I was talking about where he's like, "Oh no, please don't go."
Yeah, when they're on the. Oh, I thought they were on the landing pad when that happened.
No, it was right here.
It was right there. Please stop.
Please stop.
Don't.
Don't.
Look at the shot. Another one.
Yeah.
And this is an age in which a lot of CGI just didn't look real, didn't parlay.
It's a very Samuel L. Jackson kind of position on the chair there, I thought. Yeah. Kind of leaning there.
Yeah, and it's also important to recognize here, this movie in 1998, $50 million. This is a $50 million movie.
Wow.
That was the budget for all three of them. And, to create something like this for $50 million, that is a production win.
I mean, that's about half of what it cost to make Speed 2.
Really?
Yeah. If you watch Speed 2, you got to think that there's somebody's bank account in the Cayman Islands is really inflated. I don't know. I do not see that in that movie. I do not see where that money went.
$25 million of it is Sandra Bullock.
Sandra Bullock, yeah, good.
I mean, do you think we get like digital projection and digital filmmaking by Attack of the Clones without George? Does it happen this fast, or does it happen 10, 20 years later?
That's a good point.
I think that is an extraordinary point, and I will always worship at the altar of Lucas when it comes to his contribution to cinema, his technical achievements. My son and I just went to the Academy Awards Museum in Los Angeles that just opened, I think, last year, 2 years ago. And it had Douglas Trumbull's computer camera, which they used to shoot all of the space scenes in 77 and I believe in 80. And it had all of these gears on it so that you could track the camera forward, track the camera yaw, track the camera back, obviously. But it was like every dimension and angle that you could think of, so that if you have a TIE fighter at the end of the room, when you turned a gear, you recorded the number on a sheet of paper so that every single time you moved it, you knew what number you were at for each gear. So the pitch and the angle and the draw and the yaw were all the same, and you could recreate them all of the same. So you could shoot the same thing all of the time. So when you see those shots in Jedi, in which, remember when they pop in and the Death Star launches the TIE fighters, and there's literally like 36 TIE fighters on the screen all at the same time coming at the camera. That's how they did it, and they only had 2 TIE fighters. And they remembered the exact they didn't remember. They had recorded what each gear was at every time they took one frame of footage against those TIE fighters on a blue screen. They just recreated it, moved the TIE fighters, and then recreated it again. And if you had a 13-second shot like that at 24 frames per second, you have to make 24 frames per second for 36 TIE fighters divided by those two. That's extraordinary. 15 or 16 shots. You're talking about thousands of pictures that you have to take with this camera in order to recreate that. And so the technical achievement that he was willing to pay for, that he was willing to push with like this was shot on film.
Right.
And it wasn't until Attack of the Clones
where it was digital.
It was digital, but Attack of the Clones was not displayed digitally, right. Was it?
I don't.
But Sith was.
Right.
Sith was like one of the very first films that were to be shot on digital
and then project it on digital.
I think it's just because there weren't enough theaters that had the ability.
Well, I don't think it was until the latter part of the decade. Like, it was like 2009 or 10 before, like, it was, it was at that point in time, a lot of people were taking their film projectors out. Because I do remember David Fincher was pushing that for The Social Network in 2010. Like, he only wanted to show that on digital projection.
And, Fincher hated film. He hated cigarette burns and stuff that popped and the sound being recorded on the celluloid that you had to play back. He hated all of that. This amazing costume with the gold band over the head.
Yeah.
And I have to say the leather outfits for the Naboo guards.
I love the Naboo fighters. I love the Royal Starship, the designs. I've always loved those designs for those ships.
I see. I didn't particularly care for a lot of the spaceships in this film. I didn't particularly like all the designs. That was another thing that I struggled with because, this is going to sound really catty and shitty, but when I went to see The Phantom Menace, I was kind of hoping to see the same thing that I'd seen before.
Right.
And I was very disappointed when I didn't see those things. Now, when I went to The Force Awakens and you saw a lot of the same set designs and a lot of the same motifs and leitmotifs over and over again, that made me feel like home. But the last hour of The Force Awakens is so horrible that, again, you're in conflict of, I like what I'm seeing, I just don't like the story. Mm-hmm. To me, in The Force Awakens, like the minute Han and Chewie show up, ironically, that's when the movie goes to shit. Fast.
Right.
It's like they didn't know what to do with those characters.
Well, they panicked. They didn't want prequel backlash, so they decided to divert from what George, had sold them in his treatments, and they thought it was best to attempt to cater to fans, and that's the movie that we got.
They fired the writer.
Right.
And then JJ had to get with, was it Gary Kurtz, the guy who had...
No, Kasdan came back.
Kasdan came back, yeah. And then they went to Paris for like 3 months and hammered out the last hour.
Right.
And it's so much that actually that movie has 3 writing credits. It's the guy who was fired and then...
Michael Arndt, I think.
Yeah.
But, George's statements after that film was, there's nothing new. You're not doing anything different in this movie. I don't like it for that reason.
And he wasn't wrong.
No. And I was really frustrated at the end of this film that they had, a ceremony. Like, you had a ceremony in The New Hope. Like, don't...
Right.
Don't use the same gag. Come on. So this is where I both felt like an idiot and then I felt kind of betrayed when...
Oh, the reveal.
When the reveal happens and Kiera stands aside and Portman stands up, I was sort of like, am I the only idiot in the audience right now?
I was really disappointed in Natalie's performance here.
Yeah. Well, that and again, she was nominated for Black Swan.
She won for Black Swan.
She won for Black Swan, yeah. And I don't know if you've seen the Hotel Chevalier. It's like a 16-minute film that's supposed to be the prequel to the Darjeeling Limited, which she's in for like 1 second. But it's her and Luke Wilson, not Luke Wilson, Jason Schwartzman. They're in a hotel in Paris together, and they're having like a relationship argument, pre-coital, and the acting in those 16, 17 minutes between the two of them is some of the finest of that decade. Mm-hmm. And so it's very disappointing when you see that skill and that level of talent to something like this.
But here she's like, I'm begging you, and just gets on her knees, and everyone follows, and I wasn't a fan.
And again, Lucas is
not an actor's director.
I love Kevin Smith for this very reason, because there are people that come onto his podcast and they trash films, and Smith always says this. Now, you just remember this. 4 feet away from that camera, there's a guy looking at that performance and saying, cut. That's a wrap. Let's go. And that was Lucas in the situation saying, yep, that's what I want. That's what I need. And you may have other people on that set going, are you sure? And not saying anything. Lucas, of course, this is one of the things that I actually do like about the Phantom Menace is that he actually shot a lot of these scenes inside real palaces. Like they shot this in Portugal. They shot this in Lisbon and in Madrid. And there's a third location that is escaping me right now to get some of these inside palace scenes and they just put like blue screens out the windows. They just screened them up. Now, my biggest criticism of the big battle in the field with the droid army is that it looks like the old XP screensaver or background when you got your Windows XP.
Yeah,
it just looks like the rolling hill sea of green. Is anyone going to defend Boss Nass?
No.
No.
Lucas does have a propensity to show this very space age, futuristic or fantasy-like technology in a nature environment which is very aesthetically pleasing. Whether it's Hoth or whether it's Endor or whether it's Naboo. And it sort of erases this idea that technology is a danger, that technology is somehow going to destroy us, which is what we're all also constantly scared about, whether it's climate change or whether it's weapons of mass destruction or whether it's AI. We're always constantly thinking that this technology is going to be the end of us as a human race. And you don't see that in Lucas's films. The technology is not the threat. The humans are, or the humans is the wrong word to use in this case, but
right, the technology users.
Yes.
I really don't think we needed the rat tail on Padawans. I know that's something they've been pretty consistent with since.
Yeah.
But seeing as this is the first time they introduced that, it's one of the few costume choices that I just hate about this. In general, I really like the costumes and like the makeup and hairstyling for this movie. Just not the rat tails on the Padawans.
This scene here with the crawling hologram thing.
Yeah.
Recently, someone like recomposited the special edition and New Hope scene with Jabba and did it with that and having him being a hologram without Han like stepping over his tail. It works much better.
I bet.
It's really interesting, like that someone came up with that idea.
I mean, I love that shot. Even when it came out, it's like the crawling hologram thing.
This was the opening shot of the trailer, them walking through the fog.
Right.
It was some.
Here's the Windows XP screen I was talking about.
And a shot that seems almost like completely recreated by Peter Jackson in the Lord of the Rings trilogy.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I was gonna bring that up, or The Hobbit, or any large scale battle scene. The Phantom Menace did this. Troy came out in 2000, I want to say, and it's the same.
But was it so? Okay, 2002 is Attack of the Clones, and then that year was it Two Towers?
Yeah, because
later that year,
01, 02, 03 for the.
Okay, yeah, so later that year, and I just remember seeing Two Towers and thinking, "Wow, this is so much better."
The Battle of Helm's Deep in the Two Towers is better than any mass battle in the prequels. Yeah. And there are certain elements, particularly in Attack of the Clones, and I know previously I was referring to it in the beginning of this conversation as the Clone Wars, and I didn't mean to say that. I meant to say Attack of the Clones. There are some battle scenes in Attack of the Clones which are very political in nature. Like you can kind of get that he's talking about Afghanistan.
Right.
And even then, I was really uncomfortable with that comparison. But there were some extraordinary shots. Like there's one of the stormtroopers in a dust cloud it looked amazing. It looked Black Hawk Down amazing, and I just wish the rest of the movie were that way.
I actually played hockey with the writer of Black Hawk Down.
Did you?
Yeah, awesome guy too.
That is probably top 5 Ridley Scott films. Black Hawk Down.
One, yeah.
Incredible. And if you read the book by Mark Bowden, incredibly accurate.
I love these pilot uniforms and the little like coat thing.
Yeah, so I was used to Luke in the jumpsuit, which so this is another thing that really distinguishes the first 3 films from the prequels. Is the first 3 films, because Lucas is a boomer, and they're all boomers, and they're all in their 30s by that point, the 70s. You know, it's so World War II based, right? And the Death Star and the trench and the jumpsuits and kind of how the technology is formulated, you know, freighters and all of the terminology. It's really based out of them growing up in a post World War II era. And one thing that Ewan McGregor has talked about in some interviews is how Lucas just really wanted to change all of that and just change the perspective and change the look and the aesthetic and the feel of everything so that it looked like the height of the Republic type of situation. And that this World War II era, which, you know, Vader's helmet or the ceremony scene, which is obviously a Riefenstahl rip, like he just wanted to dump all of that and just kind of recreate and reimagine everything, which I respect that for sure. I didn't particularly like pilots wearing robes in a cockpit.
Seemed a little unpractical. I mean, none of them got caught on anything, but
yeah. And I mean, when I was a kid, like I used to go through every store we ever went to in the mall to try to find an orange jumpsuit, you know, for Halloween.
Well, you know, what we loved also about the original trilogy is everything looked lived in. Like it looked like it had been worn out in these. I love the designs of the Naboo fighters and everything, but they're just too clean. You know, they're just too off the factory floor looking. They hadn't seen any action type of look, and you know, it's not what we're accustomed to.
And yet I got to get the sense that Naboo is kind of like the Switzerland kind of the Star Wars universe. Like they just don't get in battles. They have this army and this force for show, and the pilots wear ceremonial robes and stuff like that.
But even these battle droids, they have some type of wear on them. But where do they get the wear from? They're not really doing battle.
Single-use battle droids.
Oh.
No, that's true. And, you know, in 77, that film, you know, the British Film Institute put a great book out on Star Wars in which it really focused on used space and recycled material, and particularly in the Tatooine scenes. And, you know, those stormtroopers that are in the search party just looking scuffed up and dirty. I thought there was a lot to that. He didn't want that aesthetic here. I understand the idea of Naboo's got to look almost like sterile. I get that. But are we really putting our space fighters on a marble floor in the hangar? Is that how rich Naboo is?
The scene is just it gives me.
Here's where it takes off, and here's
just
where
the music right here, just how it starts.
Great music.
It's going to be a struggle to keep talking in the next 20 minutes, right?
And they're like, "We got this."
I tell you, I still have. And my wife makes fun of me for this. Like I'm on my running playlist, I've got Duel of the Fates. Because I can tell you when that song kicks in your headphones and you're just out running, you feel like a Jedi.
Yeah.
You feel like you're in the middle of an action movie. It's such a great song.
If you don't have Duel of Fates on your iPod, you're not a Star Wars fan.
No.
It gives me just great feelings of that time too. The anticipation of the film, seeing the film with other people, and it just gives me really great memories.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I also want to point out, like there was a shot there between the three of them fighting with the lightsabers. It had like 15 contacts just within a few seconds.
Yeah.
And it's something that I noticed in this that you don't see, not just in the first Star Wars films, but in a whole lot of other scenes, particularly with swordplay. Not a whole lot of contacts. You know, you can't expect everybody to be a sword master, but particularly in the Phantom Menace, it's quite crazy. Now, a lot of people criticize Rian Johnson's film,
right?
The Last Jedi, because of the throne room scene, which when I saw in the theater, I was like, holy shit, I cannot believe this fight scene. I was completely blown away.
Oh, yeah. Loved it at the time.
I loved it, yeah. And then, of course, my son showed me this idiot on YouTube who said, this is the stupidest fight that I've ever seen, and points out there are people in the back that are waiting, and there are people just... There's a lot of inconsistencies in the fight if you watch it frame by frame. Right. I did not want to see that.
No.
So here, Lucas tracks in, and you see he changed the lens on the camera there. And then obviously that's a studio that had a green screen in a halo. And then the green screen on the floor. This push in here, 1, 2, 3.
I love that fake right there. Yeah.
And then the backflip.
And then the teeth. Oh, yeah.
Just shockingly good.
Yeah.
And if I get frustrated at anything in the finale, it's because, to me, it's too much like Jedi, which I'm sure Lucas did that on purpose, because at the end of Jedi, you have the fight on Endor, you have the fight on the Death Star between Darth Vader and Luke, and then you have the fighters between the TIE fighters and the Rebel fleet outside, and it cycles back and forth kind of like a vignette. And he's doing the same thing here. But in reality, do we give a shit about the Gungungs? No.
Not really, yeah.
Do we really care about Amidala taking over the palace? Not really, right? She's trying to capture the viceroys. What we really care about is the Duel of Fates.
Right. And even Anakin, yes, he's force sensitive. Yes, he's a great pod racer. I think just stepping in and being able to be a master pilot.
Well, the master pilot I was willing to buy. What I wasn't willing to buy was the Independence Day ending.
Yeah.
That really stuck in my craw. That, to me, was the greatest flaw of the film when I left the theater. Was like, man, I just really wish it didn't have that.
Yeah. It just really didn't need it. It's just another unnecessary scene,
He could have flown around, downed a few ships.
Right.
But this could be him targeting children. Right. I mean, kids wanting to see another kid in action more than it is for adults to have a story to follow.
And at the end, for him to say, well, it's for kids. It's like, really? Now,
if that's the case, he really underestimated his fan base.
Yeah.
Well, Hayden Christensen said in an interview recently about how, at the time, the Phantom Menace is just not the prequels were not very well loved by the people who saw them. But in the time since, there's been a younger audience that has watched them as children and has grown to love them. That may be true. Let's wait until those kids are our age and let them do their own comparison.
Right.
That's fair.
Because my kid is 20 years old now. And he feels about these films the same way I do. And I'm not telling him what to think.
Well, a lot of prequel fans, the younger audience, they had a different experience than we do. They saw the special editions and then saw the prequels. They didn't see the original unaltered trilogy and then saw the prequel. They have a completely different experience than us.
And I think as parents, one of the things we have to do is kind of determine how we're going to present Star Wars to our kids. And I know for me, it was original trilogy at least twice. And then, the prequels to supplement that. And our kids were I guess, of the age where they could see the third trilogy in real time. Yeah. They'd seen enough to where, okay, we've got a ticket to this. You're coming to see this. And I don't know how it's going to be. I hope it's good, but we'll just take a chance.
This shot on the bridge is amazing. Actually, right. when you're in the menus and you go to, I think, special features, it's that long shot of them on the bridge fighting. It's just that back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. It's brilliant.
Yeah. And it evokes New Hope, I think, in the best way with some of these matte paintings that just look so real. And I love the way the fight has to be broken up. It's great pacing.
This is one of my favorite parts of the movie coming up here, when he just paces like he's like an animal waiting to kill his prey. I love it. It's one of my favorite scenes of the film.
Yeah, and it shows you three different people with three different attitudes. Like Qui-Gon's going to be the monk, and Darth Maul is waiting for the kill. Like he cannot wait for the kill, whereas Qui-Gon can wait. But Obi-Wan also can't wait. He's so filled with concern that he can't wait either. But it's a different type of not wanting to wait than Darth Maul.
Right.
Now, that was probably the worst CGI shot of the movie. The trebuchets, the rolling trebuchets, is a nice touch, I must say. And the energy, you know what this kind of invokes me of is the Marvel film, not Civil War.
Endgame? Or
Wakanda. It's the one where they're fighting Wakanda. Yeah, Endgame. Yeah, it's Endgame.
You got Jar Jar, accidental hero. Because it's not enough to have him there to appeal to the kids. He has to actually be the one that turns the tide due to his clumsiness.
It almost kind of reminds me like a Charlie Chaplin type of great dictator type scene of I bumble and I win.
You know, there's a great quote. George Lucas did. There's these two amazing books called the Star Wars Archives XXL. There's these huge books. There's one for the original trilogy era, and there's one for the prequel era. And Paul Duncan does this book. I talk to him frequently on X. He's basically, you know, we're talking 1,200 something pages of just interviewing George Lucas in 2018, and there's one quote that I love so much that he says that, you know, Paul Duncan asks him, you know, does Star Wars belong to the public? And George says, no, I made Star Wars for me. I just lease it to you for $10 a pop. And it was just such a gangster statement from him. I loved it so much. And it just shows that, yeah, maybe he targeted to kids, but like any art form, you have to make it for yourself and hope that someone likes it. You can't try to cater to someone and hope they're going to like it. It's never going to work. I mean, it's evident today in all these films that we're seeing now. That strategy is not going to work.
You know, I completely respect Lucas for having that opinion. Absolutely. If I don't like his art, that's on me.
Right.
That's not on Lucas. The panel there looking very similar to his pod racer.
Right.
And I think that's the thing is, you know, I think the expectations are there just because the original trilogy was almost perfect in every way.
Okay, here we go with the fight between Qui-Gon and Darth Maul. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You know, there's like 9 contacts there. The lucky shot coming up, which Darth Maul couldn't get on any other day of the week. Right. Because he's just not as good as a fighter. So here was the birth of an endless amount of bitching on the internet in 1999, which is, why does Obi-Wan disappear when he dies at the end of New Hope, and Qui-Gon doesn't disappear when he dies at the end of Phantom Menace?
Right.
Well, Qui-Gon really was at the forefront of learning how to live in some capacity after death and to use the Force. And so that is something they, you know, only kind of established retroactively through the cartoons and through just one little throwaway line at the end gosh, so I guess it was the end of the third one, right? Revenge of the Sith.
Right.
And so I think subsequent Jedis who have come to be trained have kind of learned to commune with the Force.
Yeah, they discuss a lot of that in the Clone Wars. Yeah. They even bring Qui-Gon Ghosts back and things like that. So,
well, and I remember at the end of Jedi, of course, Darth Vader did not disappear. They put him on a pyre and burned him just like they did with Qui-Gon.
Right.
Which obviously was a.
And I always get the sense that Obi-Wan kind of gave himself up to the Force, kind of the way Luke did in The Last Jedi. You know, it was almost kind of a deliberate way to enter death instead of, oh, well, I didn't mean to die in that moment.
Well, I think, and again, Obi-Wan doing that was, I think he did as a distraction,
right? So
they could get away.
Okay, here we go. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. Oh my God!
And he's not spinning just to spin. I mean, these are, you know, to gain an advantage. Right. This really is, yeah.
It's more than just repetition. This is amazing stunt work.
He's still fighting from the ground. He's still fighting as he's running away.
Oh my God. Judo or jujitsu or whatever Park is using there.
There's like, with Darth Maul's movements, it's almost like this elegance to him. Like, he's not, he conserves all of his movements. They're for a reason. They're not just random hand movements and lightsaber strikes, you know.
Yeah. And this, of course, is reminiscent of Luke being in the tunnel.
Right.
The end of Empire. But, of course, even I was like, oh, no, his lightsaber. What's going to happen next? Like, I was so caught up into it. I was like, this is serious.
Well, you know, I knew that that's not the same hilt that he would later have, so it did bother me initially, but then I realized, okay, well, this explains why he gets.
Oh, you recognized it?
Yeah.
You recognized it? One up on me, my friend.
Does he go forward with, I guess, what was Qui-Gon's hilt then?
What do you mean?
Oh, because I mean, doesn't he retrieves Qui-Gon's hilt to kill Darth Maul, doesn't he?
Yeah, but I meant since he loses his, the one that we see in A New Hope ends up being the one he will use after this film.
Ah, gotcha.
It's a completely different hilt. It's nothing like the one he uses in this film. And then, you know, in Return of the Jedi, Luke would build one that looks very similar to Obi-Wan's.
Right. So here we have the 6-year-old saving the day.
Yep, Independence Day.
There's a cool Easter egg coming up here. I'll let you guys know.
Oh, please do.
There is the 1138 right there on the back of his backpack.
Oh, nice.
Right there.
Oh, I see it. I see it. Yeah. I love that movie. I love THX 1138. I think it's one of the greatest sci-fis of the 60s, and definitely between 1960 and 1980. It really stands out as visionary.
Yeah.
And then I had that repackaged edition, the double disc DVD that they put out in 2008 or whatever.
Yes.
Oh my God, I worshipped that. And when we moved to Canada, I lost it.
Oh.
Yeah.
It's almost eerie. Like, it's almost like that's where society is really going, you know?
Well, you can see other films like Logan's Run and Silent Running, films from the 70s that were just really totally, even Andromeda Strain, the sets that Robert Wise built for that are all from THX 1138.
So here you see Darth Maul split in half, and you kind of wonder, wow, I guess he was pretty cool. We could have kept him for a couple movies.
Well, yeah, you know, I do remember that being a huge criticism was getting rid of Darth Maul at the end of this, but it didn't particularly bother me all that much.
Yeah, it didn't, but I guess it was, you know, we really liked him. I don't think anyone thought that he was going to be the new Vader and be the big bad for 3 movies.
Well, I think Lucasfilm gave us that impression because all the merchandising, all the packaging had Darth Maul's face on it.
It did. He was the big design element that was very.
So I felt kind of robbed that he was gone after this because you're showing us that he was going to be this big bad, and then he's just kind of disposed with.
And then, of course, spoiler alert, you know, he does kind of get resurrected or discovered again in the Clone Wars cartoons,
right?
And again in Rebels, you know, kind of makes.
Well, at the end of what movie is it? Solo, where he's reconstructed, he's got like robot legs or something.
Legs, yeah.
So the question that I have is, you know, he is basically the bad guy in the Phantom Menace, and then General Grievous is the bad guy in the Revenge of the Sith, and then Count Dooku is the bad guy in Attack of the Clones. So we're switching bad guys. And is it not better to just keep the same enforcer for the Emperor throughout all 3 films? And if you are going to have an enforcer, who should that enforcer be? Pick your one out of those 3. I would probably pick Darth Maul out of those 3. Instead of Count Dooku, for example.
Right.
Nothing against the great Christopher Lee.
Right.
Or General Grievous, which I thought was like a brilliantly executed idea with the robot.
It was, you know, kind of a total different design, a little bit of organic material, and yet it also kind of a droid.
So here's another thing that people complained about at the time, which even I in the theater was like, wait, what? And which is, you're not going to raise this kid, but the council agrees with you and you're going to. It's just almost like an immediate backtrack.
Was their hand forced that much by Qui-Gon's death? Yeah.
Well, I think the other thing too that we kind of I mean, at least I assumed, and many other people that think like me assumed, is that Yoda trained Obi-Wan. It wasn't Qui-Gon, right?
That I think there was almost a precedent. I think that had been established.
Yeah.
You know, was I any different, Master? You know,
Right.
some of the other things.
Was I any older when you trained me? Which
Exactly.
which is like when he sees Luke, Yoda's like, he's too old. Which you're like, okay, well, what is he, like 20, 22? Yeah, okay, so he's too old. But then when he says the same thing about Jake Lloyd, yeah, he's too old to train. I think Mace Windu says that.
You know, I guess you could almost kind of justify it by saying, okay, well, if Obi-Wan was discovered as a youngling and Master Yoda trained him in class, you know, never said he was his Padawan or that he was, his master. But maybe he was trained in class by Yoda, but not.
Really quick, sorry. Yeah. This scene right here, someone had mentioned it a few months ago. I don't know if it's deliberate by Lucas, but there's a lineup of people, and it's basically all the people that Palpatine needs to get through to get to Anakin. I don't know if it's on purpose or not, but it's a side shot, and you show Padme, then Obi-Wan, and then it's Anakin. Like, he needs to get through them.
A little bit of foreshadowing there.
It could be nothing.
Right. Well, I know you got the puppet here, and of course the ears kind of sag a little bit, and that was a nod to
extra
the
hairy too.
Original puppet, because they could never really get the ears to stand up, so they're like, well, if we're going to recreate him, we have to recreate the flaw.
Oh, I see that.
Oh, there's that shot. Yeah.
You see what I mean? It could mean something, it could not, but I thought it was interesting.
Cool shot either way.
Yeah.
And then of course we've got.
The parade was kind of through the arch. This actually, if you watch the film Cleopatra, Joseph Mankiewicz, 1962, Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton. They're almost like direct pulls out of that film for this parade sequence, which was also a Fox movie, I might add. But then the ceremony at the end when they give the prize, like I didn't need. This is very Lord of the Rings right here with the statues and everything.
This gentleman right here, his name's Dan Matson. He was the head of the Lucasfilm fan club. I'm actually friends with him on Facebook. He's a really great guy. I talk to him a lot. But he was brought in to cover the making of the movie, and they asked him if he wanted to be in it, and so they made him a costume, and that was his role.
Oh, nice. Excellent. Fantastic dress that Portman is wearing here.
Oh, yeah. Love that one, too.
And I believe this is the last we ever see of Boss Nass, which couldn't come a moment too soon.
Oh, I know, right? Yeah. And here's like the Leia smile from A New Hope. And then the pullback, which is too far back.
You know, there's the thing with the ball that he gets, this symbol of peace or whatever. I guess there's in the special editions and Return of the Jedi at the end when they knock down the Emperor statue, he's holding like a sphere too. So I don't know if there's some connection. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. All right. Well, Paul, you got any final words about the Phantom Menace?
You know, I've always been a more is more Star Wars guy, you know, this has its place, and you know, I think watching it, even with all of its flaws, and I wouldn't say hate watching it, right? Because I think I still do watch it every time I do a rewatch of the series. It's still more fun than most other movies. So I'll take the worst Star Wars over the best of many other franchises. Interesting. Warren, what's your take?
I feel the same way. I think over time I've only grown to appreciate the movie more. It's my favorite of the prequels. I definitely hated it at the time, but that kind of viewpoint has changed, and I enjoy watching it. I think it's a good time. It's a great time to remember 25 years ago and the time leading up to the film.
Guys, I can't thank you enough for coming over and watching this with me. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining Warren Hayes and Paul Emig and I talk about The Phantom Menace. Oh, I'm sorry. Star Wars, Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. You can find Warren on Twitter. He's at Warren_Hayes, Hayes. All music is done by Rosalind McPhail, and you can also find her on Twitter and her website, www.rosalindmcphail.com. You can find me, my books, and my blog at www.thatdylandavis.com. You can also email me at thatdylandavis@gmail.com. I'm Dylan Davis, and we'll meet next time in Gotham City.
You come back, huh? You're gonna lose unless you upgrade your pod racer, I think.